everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome back to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I hope you enjoyed our opening music. It's called Clarion Call by the Mark Arneson Band, which you can download on any of your favorite music platforms. For those of you that are new to us, Alzheimer Speaks is about sound information, not just sound bites. We want to have real conversations with real people in the trenches. And boy, are we going to do that today when we talk about the film Where's Nancy? Our goal here is to raise all voices, big and small, all around the world. So if you are a person diagnosed, if you are a family member who cares for someone, if you are a professional in the industry, in healthcare or support services, maybe you've written a book, you have a YouTube channel, a blog, a podcast. It is endless. Maybe you're just really strong at advocacy and raising funds. Maybe you have clinical trials and are a researcher. Please reach out to me. I would love to talk to you. Again, you can just reach out to me at radio@alzheimerspeaks.com. Now, before I introduce our guest today, I want to just give a couple of shout outs. One, I want to talk about a new book that I just launched. It's called Betty the Bald Chicken, Lessons in How to Care. And it's a story I've told for years, speaking, doing keynotes and training sessions. And it really isn't just dementia specific. It's for anybody who has ever felt like they didn't fit in at one time or another. It's a great children's book. It has questions in the back, which just open up a comfortable conversation to feelings and situations that a lot of times kids don't share with us. And a lot of times adults don't either. So please check out Betty the Bald Chicken. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can go to Kirk House Publishing, or you can go to alzheimerspeaks.com to our book tab. If you want an autographed copy, I'd love to accommodate you there. Also on alzheimerspeaks.com, we have one section that is all free resources, and there's a multitude of them. So feel free to check those out and pass those along. Okay, it is time to introduce you to our guest today, and I am thrilled to have this trio with us. Dru Miller has spearheaded numerous film and television projects, including the award-winning film Chocolate, which is about early onset Alzheimer's, and also Duke, which is about severe autism. She has a film, Life on a Leash, and Second Time Around, for which she served as executive producer, creator, and a writer. And she is the head of D. Ellen Miller Productions. We also have with us Thiago Dadalt, and he is an award-winning writer, editor, director from Brazil. And he has won numerous awards for his film Chocolate that he worked with Dru with. And he was also involved in the film Duke, which was about severe autism. And Duke was actually officially selected at the Emerging Filmmaker Showcase at Cannes 19 in Cleveland, Stage 32 contest. We also have with us Kirk Moody, who is a retired engineer and was a full-time caregiver for his wife, Nancy Polikas, who suffered from early onset Alzheimer's disease. Kurt actually spent 26 months looking for Nancy after she wandered from a family outing at an art museum. Well, I'm so excited to have this conversation with all of you today. I've really been looking forward to this. I think this is such a important topic on many levels, from the utilization of film to get to people for awareness and education. And a lot of people don't want to talk about dementia, and so going through a film base is so different because they don't really know what they're in for. But I haven't seen a film about dementia that hasn't been powerful and hasn't gotten people talking. So first, Kirk, I want to say to you, thank you for sharing your story about Where's Nancy, and to Thiago and Dru, again, the filmmakers of this, just a beautiful, heartfelt, heart-wrenching story on a lot of levels. But people have to understand what could happen, and then how do you step around that? How do you try to avoid that? How do you protect your loved one the best you can? And if we don't share stories, we can't help other people. And I think that is a critical moment. So what I want to do first is to have everybody start out by sharing how they've been touched by dementia, if they've been touched by dementia in their own family or circle of friends. And Dru, I'm going to go to you first, if you don't mind.
Okay. Thank you, Lori. So yeah, I think all of us either know someone or related to someone or have someone in our social circle that has been affected with Alzheimer's, both early onset and then later on. I have been affiliated with it because I was an occupational therapist in my last life, and I actually worked in a memory care unit. So that was one of my first experiences when I was in my 20s. I did have an uncle that passed away from Alzheimer's in his early 80s. And, he wandered and he got lost and drove from LA to San Diego and walked into a McDonald's and said, I don't know where I am. I don't know who I am, but here's my wallet. Can you help me? And so the young man behind the counter at McDonald's actually found him and were able to call my aunt, and he was rescued. So that was my personal experience with Alzheimer's. But yeah, and so doing this film with Thiago, and thank you, Kirk, also, it was, just I don't want to say a wonderful experience, but it was so nice to tell the story of how horrible this disease is. And whether you're 50 or 80, it's just a devastation to the family and to the friends.
As much as there is no medication, you have solutions for something like what happened to Nancy to not happen to anybody else. So I think, thank you, Kirk, for letting us to tell this story, and so people can watch it like, oh yeah, we have to get a bracelet. We have to, make sure that person's safe. But in my experience, I don't know anybody with Alzheimer, never been related to anybody. So for me, it was the first experience, and I learned so much as we made it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic, Dru, that you had that experience of someone wandering off, and you were lucky enough that they had the wherewithal to ask for help, because that, of course, does not always happen. Exactly. And stuff. And for others like you, Thiago, who have never been touched by it, I've talked with other filmmakers that say, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And again, the education of the process there. Kirk, do you want to tell us a little bit about your story and Nancy's story? Just kind of set us up a little bit.
Sure. So my wife, Nancy Polikas, had early onset Alzheimer's, and it was getting rather advanced. And the story goes that my family was out visiting my mother, my sister, her wife, and we met a cousin at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art who had some art there, and we toured the museum, and we were at the end of our day, we were about to go, and I checked with Nancy to see if she'd want to go to the restroom again, and she did. So I dropped her off at the restroom and immediately discovered that the men's room is not right next to the women's room. So the men's room was downstairs. So I went downstairs as quickly as I could, and usually I was, could get finished about the same time Nancy would, and then she'd be out waiting for me outside the restroom. And this time she wasn't waiting, so I waited for her a little bit, and she didn't come out. And so I kind of went through a couple of the galleries just to see if she went into there, and didn't see her. And then went and got my sister and asked her to go to the restroom and look for her. And we just kind of continued to look. And after a little while, one of the security people noticed that we seemed to be looking around, not really looking at Art, and asked what was going on, and they got on it right away, and everybody, all the security people were looking for her and everything, and we did that for a while, and I finally came to the conclusion, I don't think she's at the museum anymore. We would have seen her. And so we called the police, and they came out very quickly, and they started doing a search. This is in a very, very, very dense area. It's lots of single family homes and apartment complexes and stuff, but it's just remarkably dense part of Los Angeles. And we couldn't, we didn't locate her, and the police kept looking for her. And then the next day I got a whole bunch of friends going, and over the next week or so, even more and more and more people started looking for her. And I think it hit the hundreds at some point. And we didn't find her. We looked, and in fact, and in one form or another, I was looking for the next 26 months.
My mom lived with dementia for 30 years, but she was not a wanderer. We were really, really lucky about that. But you don't know someone is going to wander until they wander. I mean, it's just every person.
Yeah, so I guess the statistics bear that out. Like 60% of the people with Alzheimer's will eventually wander. And I think some people that are caregiving for somebody don't necessarily, they'll think, well, they'll never wander. And I kind of would think that about Nancy. She wasn't going to wander away from me. Mm-hmm. She might get lost, right? Or she might get confused if we're not in a familiar place. She wasn't going to go out the front door necessarily, but she certainly might go looking for me or something like that. And I obviously don't know, but my guess is that she thought that I had left. So she left that museum as quickly as she could, thinking that it was time to go, and she went looking for me.
Yeah. It's, when you said about going to the restroom, that is a huge issue. And I hear that from people a lot. I haven't heard so much in a museum, but in like airports where there's two exits or two entrances, and the spouse is standing outside the entrance they went in, but they go out the other side, and nobody's there for them, and then they get lost. And yeah, it's absolutely frightening. I've misplaced my mother a couple of times at large events, and all of a sudden I'll see I was lucky. She ended up sitting down. We were at a play with some other family, and they just kind of took her in and started talking with her. But we were like, the panic. I just can't imagine the panic that you're going through. And 26 months is a long, long time. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to go back up to our filmmakers here, Dru and Thiago, and I want to talk about a short film that you did called Chocolate, and how that kind of ties into the documentary on Where is Nancy?
I'll start.
Okay.
So actually, Thiago came to me with this idea. He wanted to portray the early onset Alzheimer's population along with the homeless community. Mm-hmm. So it was obviously a social impact film, which we have a passion for. But
it was not based in anybody's story.
It was not based. It was totally fictional.
Totally fictional.
Totally fictional. And he told me about it, and we fine-tuned it, and we filmed it. And I loved the idea of Thiago's idea of this film, Chocolate. And it just so happened that the girl that starred in it, her name is Piercy Dalton. She is the one that actually connected us with Kirk. I believe she was at a gym.
So yeah, what happened is right after we finished film in we finished filming in July 2016. We had the film done 2 months later, edited, we showed the people, we were about to have a premiere in LA.
It was in the can.
And then October 16, I believe, right, Kirk? 15 was when Nancy went missing, and they had flyers all over the city. So the actress in Chocolate saw the flyer, and she texts me and say, hey, look, this is happening, just like in the movie that we just did. So she volunteered herself, and she went to a couple family gathering at the LACMA, and she asked me about what about invite the family for the premiere of the movie. And in my mind, in your mind, actually was like, well, how do you ask a family that is going through a process like this?
And it was so recent.
It was so recent. But anyways, she got in talk with Kirk and she invited them. And for our surprise, they all came to the screening.
And Kirk spoke.
And at the end of the movie, Kirk spoke, and I think he can talk more about his experience. But it was such a interesting connection, and that making a story that was a fiction story, and so close. Like we just finished, and Nancy went missing. I mean, if she was in a different city, this would never happen. You know what I mean? Like we'd never know who she was.
The storylines were very parallel.
Yeah.
And we got endorsed, I believe, through
by the
Greater Los Angeles.
Greater Los Angeles.
Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So when we
did. So Greater Alzheimer's Los Angeles was there at the premiere, and I was willing to do that. Actually, happy to do it because, very frankly, I was looking for anything that I could do to publicize Nancy still being missing, because it's hard to keep it in the news and hard to keep it in front of people's faces. So this looked like an opportunity, knowing nothing about the movie other than what the subject matter was. And I went to the premiere, and it turns out it's a phenomenal movie. It's just they did such a tremendous job. It's I recommend everybody to go see this movie, Chocolate. It's fantastic. And
so thank you. So we should give a plug for that. How do they see that film?
The film is available on YouTube right now for free. People can watch. But if you go in the website, DLE Miller Productions is a link right there. So it's easier for people to watch, and watch on TV, guys. Don't watch on your cell phones.
Yeah.
Have an experience, a real experience.
Yeah, we'd love for you to go to our website. Anyways.
Yeah.
That would be great.
That had to be hard to watch for you, going through that and then seeing, this experience on the big screen. I would have been just a ball of tears.
Well, it wasn't easy. And Dru mentioned the star, Piercy Dalton, and she had 2 or 3 things that she did so well in the movie. It was really, really tough to watch. So there's a particular scene where she sort of has a vacant look when somebody's kind of screaming at her. She just sort of has a vacant look, like, why is this person screaming at me? And it was, it looked like, my wife, looked like Nancy. I got that look before, she went missing, of course. And I knew what that was like, and it's a horrible, for those of us that have experienced caregiving for somebody with Alzheimer's. You know that, and you know that the person that you once knew is no longer really there at the moment. They're somewhere else. They're not really there, and that's pretty tough to take. So yeah, it was no question. It was pretty hard to watch that movie, but it was well done.
Well, and I think what drives so many of us too is just the passion to try to help others not go through what we've experienced.
Yeah.
And putting that first. I know that's how I got into this space. I didn't sign up and go, this is a dream of mine at all. I didn't really know anything about it. And then you kind of just get doused in it. And, for me, I just found that more needed to be done in different fashions. And so I thought I would try to make a difference. And you guys have definitely made a difference with this film. I think what we're going to do right now is watch the trailer, and then we'll come back and talk about that.
She went missing after being separated from her family during a visit here to LACMA back on October 15th. Her family found surveillance video that shows Nancy leaving the museum, walking west on Wilshire Boulevard before she wasn't seen again.
You see how big this city is, and you see how many different places she can be, and it's just crushing. You just can't imagine how you're going to find her.
10 people in Los Angeles are missing every day. 8 or 9 of them reappear within 48 hours, but the others are not to be found.
It's possible that somebody is hiding her, or a facility has her fraudulently and they don't want to give that information up.
2030, 0.5% of the entire world population will have Alzheimer's disease. The United States, right now, it's getting close to 6 million individuals, and that increases every year.
Wickedly smart, trained as an engineer. She was a private pilot.
Now, she's got the mentality of a 5-year-old, and she's got medical needs.
I was going home and I seen her right in the corner of my house.
Is this a routine pattern of fraud that we see throughout the state of California and indeed the country? There's no glory in this. There's greed and tragedy, and we're just trying to find answers.
Please pass these recommendations and please continue to look for my wife, Nancy.
So she's out there.
Where is she?
Yeah, so where is she? We don't, it's still a puzzle. We have no idea.
Well, this is a fantastic trailer to watch. It sure has my interest perked, even though I know a little bit about the story. You never know it all and what transpires. So, Kirk, I want to talk to you a little bit about, how did you feel about the trailer? Did you feel like it summed things up nicely and intrigued people to learn more?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good little teaser, and there's no, I'm not an expert on anything to do with Hollywood or trailers, anything like that, but it certainly seems to get people's attention.
Mm-hmm. We're going to talk a little bit about the filmmaking process. So how do you pull a film like this together? How do you pull the storyline out of Kirk and find the pieces to weave it?
So let me start. What happened is, after we had that meeting and met Kirk and his family, every time the movie just start going to film festivals. So every time we show chocolate, we would talk about Nancy and, giving flyers and hopefully help. And we were in touch a lot, right, Kirk? And so he would keep me posted about things. But after a year that he was looking for Nancy, and I saw that he was not getting that much attention that he did in the beginning, and because, become old news. And so Dru and I, we got together, like, we have this unbelievable story in your hands, somebody so close to us, and very similar story to what we did. I don't consider myself a documentary filmmaker, but it was a necessity to tell the story. And we decided, well, if Kirk allow us, we definitely want to film the story, at least the search and what's going on, because it was so many options and he had no idea. Like, it was so many things going on about where she could be, how she, So then I don't know if I call you, Kirk, or how do we talk?
No, we met with Kirk.
Do we?
Yeah.
And that's how we decided. But again, we didn't know how to tell the story. That's for sure. So it was a year filming and getting interviews and getting pictures and all those moments that you can see in the movie.
Yeah. And there were certain scenes where obviously we had to reenact them. Mm-hmm. Because there were certain scenes that we really wanted to display and show in the film.
Yeah, we want to
like when she actually went missing.
Our experience of what happened, because we didn't want just the movie to be a talking. We wanted to. I believe filmmaking. It's an act of making people feel how it was, that situation, right? So I think when people put themselves in Nancy's shoes is when they can really feel what happened to somebody in that situation. And if they feel touched, maybe they help and, something changed. So that was our idea to portray a fake Nancy in the movie. And
just in the beginning.
Yeah. And thank Kirk for allowing me to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't happy with the decision at the beginning, but it worked out okay.
Right.
I know. Yeah. And the police department was very congenial and very helpful.
True.
And
everybody, because even Kirk actually he has been through the process for a year. So he really helped me open the doors and talk with these people and being around. And so it was a hard, great experience for us.
I will mention now, I'll just give a plug. I don't know if you heard of the sunflower lanyards, but the airports are starting to use them. Some of the museums are starting to use them. And it's just a lanyard for anyone with an invisible disability. And so they can be recognized with contact information on the back. And there's more things popping up all the time. But when you're the one going through it, it doesn't seem like there's anything out there at all. And you want it orchestrated so that people know how to find these things, or even, like you said with the film, bringing awareness that these things can happen. You don't think much about going to the bathroom. You go, you come out, everything's always been okay. I've done that a million times in my life. And then all of a sudden you're in crisis. I mean, who would have thought? We don't think about all those little angles. So, Kurt, how did your family feel about making the film? Did you get any pushback? I know sometimes families aren't always on the same page with things like that.
Well, the key players were Nancy's parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I discussed it with them before we gave them the okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Dru, I don't know, you apparently you remember this much better than I do. I my guess is I spent a couple of days thinking about it, whether or not we're going to go through with this. And I checked with George and Joan, my in-laws. And I guess I don't remember checking with my family in Colorado, but they were all open to being interviewed by Thiago and getting information. That was not a problem. So yeah, they were okay with it too. Again, I can't belabor the point enough, but the search had sort of died out, right? People's awareness that Nancy was missing had died out. We're looking for any way to get that back into the people's awareness. And at this point, after, as Thiago said, after about a year, letting other people know about this, not just Nancy, but their situation and how they could help, that'd be great. So Nancy, you were talking about the lanyard. Nancy was probably wearing a medic alert bracelet.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that anybody ran into her to notice that bracelet, right? I don't think, she didn't have an emergency situation where she went to a hospital or anything like that, where that would have been helpful.
Yeah.
So having the, a technology thing that you can track somebody down, I think is also very, very beneficial in some cases.
Well, and it's interesting because I think sometimes people think, well, they didn't look lost, so nobody approaches, nobody steps in.
Yeah, we actually got some, you can see in the movie, we have a little bit of film of Nancy walking down the street caught by, some security cameras, and she doesn't look the least bit lost. She's just moving right along.
Yeah.
And looking lost in Los Angeles is certainly not, you don't get a lot of pause out of people for that. I don't really want that to be funny, but it's very true. You have an awful lot of people out there and they don't all look like they're compos mentis at all times. So. Yeah.
Well, I know we had a gentleman who he had given up his driving for 6 years. Just automatically told his wife he didn't want to drive anymore. He didn't think it was safe. And she didn't think anything about hiding the keys to the car because he was always fine. And she said one morning, out of the blue, he got up like at 4 and was all dressed. And she's like, "Where are you going?" And well, he was going to go get the home health aid. And she's like, "Well, no," she comes to us, got him back to bed. And she was exhausted. She wasn't sleeping well because he wasn't sleeping well. And he got up again and he grabbed the keys to the car. And he was gone for hours and he looked okay. He ran out of gas and the construction workers gave him some gas, on the road, and he kept going. He ended up getting on the freeway the wrong way and the police turned him around and sent him home. And it was just one thing after another because it looks like a nice person, they don't seem to,
Right.
And so we have to put in different ways to be able to find people. It's kind of like with dementia, well, you look okay,
Exactly.
Nothing's wrong. But when you have those short interactions, that's exactly what it can be like. Now, one of the things I know when we were talking offline, you had talked to me about LA Found. Can you tell our audience what that's about?
Yeah, I'd love to. So while we were looking for Nancy, actually, they're pretty early on. our county supervisor found out about this and came over to my house with my in-laws here and talked to us to see if there's something she could do to help. And one of the stories that came out there is that I had been calling, virtually every county office, and I didn't even know how the county was organized, right? I still don't know how the county is organized. My God, it's a huge county, 10 million people in the LA County. But it's, Department of Mental Health, Department of Adult Protective Services, the police, the sheriff's department, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was calling all these different groups within the county, and she heard that, and she heard other frustrations I had in looking for Nancy and the cooperation I got from various people, or lack of cooperation in certain cases. And she got frustrated by that too. And she said, well, we ought to be able to do a better job in a county the size of Los Angeles and the resources to, when somebody like this goes missing, it's called a critical missing person if you're unable to really care for yourself. We ought to be able to handle that better. And so she put together a task force, and that included county employees, included people in the community that are associated with this, like Alzheimer's Los Angeles and Alzheimer's Association, and some autism groups. And they invited myself and my in-laws to join that and give our real world experience, which was pretty valuable, because people said, well, our process is blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, it turns out that may be a process, but that's not exactly what I encountered. That's not what I saw. They were sometimes quite surprised by that. But from that, they came up with 17 recommendations to give to the county, and that was approved by the Board of Supervisors. And they created this agency called LA Found. And the LA Found looks at all the way through, preventing people from wandering, what happens if they do wander, and then how to find them if that happens. And one of the cornerstones of the program is Project Lifesaver. Lori, you mentioned offline that you are familiar with that. So I won't bore the audience, but it's basically a wristband, or you can put it in other places too, but a wristband you can wear, and if you wander, the sheriff's department can track you down pretty quickly using some tracking equipment. And it's not based on cell or GPS information, which is handy in certain cases and kind of a pain in other cases. But it's a technology that's been around for quite some time, and it's very effective if people are wearing the watches. In fact, no one that's been wearing one of those that we've given out in LA Found, we've given out 1,000 of them. No one that's wandered with those has not been found. So this is a pretty good story. And hats off to Supervisor Hahn for pushing this through and sticking with it.
Well, that is wonderful. I'm going to have to reach out to LA Found. I would love to have them on the show to talk about what they're doing, because I think this is something that needs to be duplicated in other cities and counties as well. I know there are things like the caregiver alert system too, where people can subscribe and kind of describe their person, what they look like, what color are their eyes, how much do they weigh, what's their height. If they would happen to drive a car, they can have a picture of that in the license plate, all that stuff that you just get scattered with at the last minute, when someone's asking, you can have that set and ready to go, and they'll shoot that out to just a mob of people, so that you've got feet on the ground looking for this person as well. And it can translate languages. So it's really cool if you're traveling and things. There are cards, and I don't know if you were ever familiar with those, that say, I'm living with dementia, please be patient with me. And then I know our dementia friendly group in Roseville added contact information. Here's my care partner, here's their contact information. And also for the care partner to have that card on them saying, I'm responsible for somebody with dementia. So if I get hit by a bus, or if I have a heart attack or a stroke, call my sister to make sure that they pick up our person. And all of those little things make such a huge difference in this process, and being able to get it communicated. Now, when Nancy went missing, did they do kind of a press release and push that out for everybody then?
Oh yeah. The effort looking for Nancy was huge, and we had a missing persons alert, we had a silver alert out, I got it covered by the Los Angeles Times more than once. I got it covered by lots of local our group, my team, and the police, etc. I'm sorry, that was very rude of me to say I. We were able to get it publicized pretty broadly, yeah. And there were follow-up stories as well to it when, later on when something else would happen.
Well, that's wonderful. I know I had a friend who's had somebody go missing and they couldn't get a press release out. And they waited and waited and waited. Well, they're an adult, and it's just like, no, they have a disability. This needs to be handled differently. And when I found out, I'm like, I'm picking you up and we're driving up there and we're not leaving until either they do it or we're going to the press. And we'll control the scenario here, because it isn't always that way, depending on cities, because this isn't something that happens all the time. So it gets complicated, but you need to, I think, anytime you're dealing with caring for a loved one with dementia, I mean, you have to be a power advocate. And I'm glad that it went well as far as the communication process, for you, with that. But again, like you mentioned earlier, you have to kind of keep bringing it up and finding another angle to keep it in the news, because there's so much going on.
Yeah, an anecdote about that, by the way, is we actually took out ads in the Los Angeles Times that one of them took up an entire page, another one took up a quarter of a page. An anecdote about that is we had a full page ad, and then it was followed by some quarter page ads in the Los Angeles Times, and we put them in the Los Angeles Times. I mean, this is a big newspaper, right? Mm-hmm. And we put them in various sections of the paper. And a few weeks after we ran those ads, George, my father-in-law, was talking to a friend of his who reads the paper every single day. And the name Polycus is unusual, right? And George happened to mention, that Nancy was missing. And his friend said, "Really?" And George said, "Didn't you see the paper? It was in the paper." And no, I didn't see it. I mean, we had articles in the paper. We had a picture of Nancy. We had her name in the paper. It's just what people notice. So even with all this publicity and everything, she could have walked right by somebody and they never would have had a clue. It's very frustrating, but a very real thing, and a very kind of a cautionary tale that you think people know about it and they simply don't.
My mother saw ads. Yeah, she would always call me and tell me. Mm-hmm.
Well, and people, they say they read the paper, but most people don't read it front to back. Same with the news. They pop on for certain sections that they want to hear. And, there's things.
Absolutely. And I'm an expert at ignoring ads completely. It looks like an ad. It doesn't get my attention at all.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think that's important for people to know as well. And just, the cost of placing those types of things too. Not every family has the money to do that. If you're charged, I would imagine, after the first story, you probably are, but I could be wrong. I think every paper and media outlet's going to be a little bit different on that, too.
Yeah. So the LA Times gave us a little break on the first few ads and then charged us, and you bring up a good point. I'm very fortunate to have the resources, both in time and financially, to do this search for as long as I did.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You had a reward also, didn't you, Kirk? If I remember.
Oh yeah, we kept on. The police kept on trying to keep the award down, because they thought the bigger the award, the more crazies coming out of the woodwork and stuff. And we kept upping it, at one point we're upping it just again. We can get back in the press. Family increases reward, right? And I think only really like one or two people called because of the reward. Well, I'm going to go look for it because of the reward, and I was like, great. You go for it, right? But I do think that's probably not all that useful, but I don't have any idea.
Yeah, interesting. I want to go back to the trailer, and I want to ask about challenges, with making the movie, and if there was a favorite part for you. And Dru, if you want to go first.
Well, I mean, whenever you're making a film, you're always going to have challenges. Mm-hmm. Like one in particular, when we were trying to recreate a scene when Nancy walked out of the museum, we were, going on different location researches and trying to figure out where we could do it. and people were charging an arm and a leg, and our budget was not huge. And so finally I said to Thiago, why don't we ask Greater Los Angeles Alzheimer's? And he was like, light bulb went off. That's a great idea.
Right. And they help us. Yeah.
Yeah.
They allow us to film like Nancy's coming out their place, like she's coming out from the museum. So that was pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like we wanted to display the search, and part of it was the helicopter. And so
we found one helicopter that was actually
like a canned
red.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. But then we finally find a good footage from the LAPD doing search.
But everything is very expensive, but they will charge you just to use that, you know, 3 to 5 seconds of footage.
They wanted to use some news footage, right? This is
public
domain. You can go on the web and get this stuff, right? You can go look it up right now. But if you call CBS, they won't return your phone call. And when they finally did say, oh yeah, you know, for $50,000 you can run that 5-second thing we did about Nancy, you're like, $50,000? That's the whole budget. I'm speaking for you. Sorry.
No, yeah, but thank you to you, Kirk, and your connections. We were able to get some of the footage and pictures because of you. But for me personally, the experience of being around the family, Kirk, and meeting everybody, it was amazing experience for me doing that. It was hard moments when I was following them and knocking on doors or going to hospitals and looking for Nancy. That was really hard. But they're very good keeping me, reminding me what this was about. It was about helping people and hopefully find Nancy, right? That was the idea. We hopefully would have find Nancy by the end of the film. That was what we expected, but then everything changed. So people have to watch to see what happened.
Yes. And there's a lot of bureaucracy in LA. I know Kirk experienced it firsthand with different departments that we did show in the film about. So I'll let people watch it to see, but you know, the Forest Service and the fire department, and left hand doesn't always know what the right hand is doing, and things like that. Not in a negative way, but in an unfortunate way.
In a realistic, this is our life. And this is when you have these big bureaucratic systems, and they are subdivided. There isn't always that overlap. And, you know, when you're at the core of it, you really need that support to come in from all directions working together.
Right. It's nobody's job to find a missing person. I mean, the police will help you with that, but that's not really their main focus. They do have a missing persons department, and they keep their eyes open, but they're not. It's really kind of nobody's job. It's not the hospital's job to identify people and things like that. It's just not their job, and they're not equipped for it, really.
Kirk, for you in the film, was there anything that was kind of your favorite in terms of this piece? Something that just makes you smile? I know
that's a unique question, Lori.
I know, but I also think of the film as a legacy piece in some fashions too, but maybe you don't see it in that fashion.
I thought you were going to ask what was hard about the film, and I was going to joke about making coffee.
That's my second question to you.
My favorite part. Let's see. In the finished product of the film, without giving away anything, I'm so impressed at how Thiago tied in different experts in different areas that we had to go explore. So they mentioned homelessness in the chocolate film. Well, one of the possibilities early on in the search was that she ended up in a homeless situation, homeless area, homeless, being taken care of by homeless services or something. So, and that's a pretty tough one to go. And then Thiago was able to integrate in some Alzheimer's experts to talk about that and everything. And so the overall, he really gave a complete soup to nuts picture of this thing, which I thought it was brilliant the way he did that. So in the overall product, I think that's the key thing.
Wonderful. And for challenging piece for you?
Patience. I'm not an actor, and it's quite obvious in the film, by the way. But Thiago had in mind, for example, this, something me walking away from the museum, and he had something in his mind, and I don't know how many times we filmed that, but it seemed like 100 times until he says, "Oh, that's perfect. Do it again." Like, well, it wasn't perfect. I had to do it again. So,
and what did I just do? Yeah.
Yeah, what did I just do? So, no, it's, and I had, it's just new to me. I'm not familiar with doing something like that. So that was just, it was an interesting process more than just frustrating, but it was interesting.
Well, thank you for that. So why don't we tell people how they can watch the film?
So the movie is now in 3 platforms. They can watch at Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and Google Play on USA, Canada, and UK. Mm-hmm. So the movie is available in those platforms. If people want to check it out in one link, where to find and all those things, they go to dlmillerproductions.com, and it's going to be there. And hopefully people watch on the TV. It's a better experience.
Yeah, much more impact.
Yeah, than in a cell phone or something. And actually, after we finish the film, we really hope, that people watch the movie, and the Project Lifesaver, it's something that people wanted to recreate in their cities. And hopefully this situation will help other people to be found and not go through the same process that Kirk had to do.
Okay. Kirk, people can also reach you on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, there's a Facebook page called Nancy is Missing, in fact. I kept that up there because people continue to look at it, and when there's somebody goes missing, I will post that information up there on that. So Nancy is Missing his page, and then Kirk Moody I do have a Facebook account, sure.
Okay. And then the film itself has a Facebook page, Where's Nancy, and same on Instagram, Where Is, and then it looks like _Nancy for that. We might as well go ahead and mention your contact information for the production company as well. Again, that's dellenmillerproduction.com, dellenmillerproduction.com. And then Facebook is D. Ellen Miller Productions. And then on Instagram, you have 2, one for Dru 2110, and then one for you, Thiago, and I'll go ahead and spell that out, THIAGO, and last name is DADALT. And then you also have a D. Ellen Miller Productions on Instagram. So you guys are really active over there on Instagram.
Oh, we're trying. It's a lot of things. So.
Yeah, it is. There's so many different social medias popping up. It's hard to keep up with them all.
That's why, if people want to know about the movie in particular, it's good to go to the website, and all the information is going to be there. Mm-hmm. So dellenmillerproductions.com. Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to add, Lori, I think Thiago will agree, and I'm sure Kirk as well, as there was also a great deal of knowledge to be learned when we made this film. Like, one thing in particular for me, and it's in the film, is that there are scams in sometimes these group homes or nursing facilities. And it's not that people are getting terrible care, because that's not the point at all. They're not getting terrible care, but these Jane Does or John Does that show up with no identity, and they're I don't know, making an identity for them. And I don't know how they do it, but then they get money from the government. And Kirk, you might be able to shed some more light on this, because you were right there in the facilities, as were Nancy's parents. But when I saw that part and read that part, I was just like, wow, now that is creative, and so sad.
Yeah, well, there's actually an office for Medi-Cal fraud, and one of the fraud schemes is that they'll go offer somebody on the street a cup of coffee and a bed for the night, and then they'll go in and they will claim that they did a bunch of medical tests, and they'll get a doctor to sign that they need to stay in that home. So then they'll get Medi-Cal reimbursement for that. And in the Jane Doe or John Doe instance, there's a couple of different scenarios that are a little bit frightening. So if you could potentially be unidentified in the hospital or be misidentified in the hospital, slightly more common. And then that's just your new identity, and they pass you off onto like a care facility or a nursing home. And that's how you are represented in that facility. And then the Medi-Cal fraud may uncover some of these things because the numbers don't line up in terms of Social Security and things like that. So sometimes it's exposed, and sometimes it's an innocent mistake, but sometimes it is. It's just fraud. They're trying to get more money out of Medi-Cal. And there's been some lawsuits about that and things like that. I guess I'm not really an expert on that. There's Thiago and I met a woman who's making a documentary about that. So that's a frightening aspect of this whole thing as well.
Yeah. We don't have a shortage of scammers out in the world. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Boy, they do get creative. Let's talk about what's next for your production company. Do you have anything up that you want to share with us?
Yes. In fact, it's on our website. We just completed a documentary, and
it's called Beyond, and it's about a single mother of two nonverbal autistic young adults.
Yeah,
and
boys.
It's a very powerful film as well. That movie came up during the pandemic. We met this amazing woman called Tamara Mark, and because nobody could do much during the pandemic, right, we decided to spend the entire year filming whatever was happening in their house. It's just so many situations there.
And the irony of it also is that we did do a short film called Duke, which is based on a true story. And that's kind of how indirectly we got connected to Tamara Mark and her story. So it's very...
it goes fluid that way, yeah. And interesting, I met actually the person who introduced me to Tamara, I met because of Kirk. Her name is Azira. And when I met her, first thing she told me that she watched my short film about autism, and she was like, oh, I have someone that you should meet. And that's how the movie came about. So it's called Beyond. People can watch the trailer and the website. We are now at film festivals, and hopefully it's going to be available soon for people to watch.
Yep.
Wonderful. Well, it is a small world, and how those connections happen is just amazing. But especially when you're looking at, these films that are such a social impact, those are close-knit communities, and things spread, and people want to get involved, and they want to help the situation out. So kudos to you guys in the work that you're doing.
Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you for being part of the show. In wrapping up, I want to thank you all for sharing your story and the work that you do. I am hoping that our audience will like, click, and share. Be a giver of hope. There's always somebody out there that needs this information. And to be honest, most of them don't tell us what they're going through. A lot of people keep this to themselves. So the more information that we can put out there in a normal, friendly fashion, the easier it's going to be for someone to reach out and grab that help and get the information they need. So, it only takes a few seconds to like, click, and share. And, maybe you'll be our next guest. Maybe this story is going to hit home for you, and you're going to find that you've got a story to share as well. So if so, please reach out to me at radio@alzheimerspeaks.com. And again, in the meantime, keep your eyes peeled. There's always somebody out there that needs help, and they might not always look like they need help. So thank you very much for staying with us. And again, really encourage you to watch the film Where is Nancy, along with Chocolate, and now your new one coming up, Beyond. So thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you, Kirk. Thank you, Lori.
Well, hi, I'm Lori LeBay, and I wanted to tell you about Alzheimer Speaks, which is another great podcast. You see, my own mother lived with dementia for 30 years, and I felt lost. Did you know every 3 seconds someone in the world is being diagnosed with dementia? Odds are it's going to hit your families too. We want to help you connect to services, products, tools, research, and stories so you can be prepared. Please subscribe to Alzheimer Speaks on your favorite podcast platform.